I never imagined that one ordinary morning would mark the beginning of the most heartbreaking chapter of my life, but also the one that would eventually lead to the most unexpected justice. My name is Samina. I was 62 at the time, living in the home of my daughter Zoya and her husband Arman after the passing of my beloved late husband. When Zoya had begged me to move in, she stood in the doorway with watery eyes and said, "Ummi, a home without you has no heart." I had packed only what mattered most: my clothes, my small jewelry box, my prayer mat, and most precious of all, my blue velvet box tied carefully with an old ribbon, holding letters my husband wrote to me over 40 years of marriage. At first, everything was peaceful. I cooked biryani every Friday, told bedtime stories to my granddaughter Mira, adjusted pillows in the living room, and spent evenings quietly praying in the warmth of the room they gave me. But peace slowly felt rented, not owned. Arman tolerated me at best, but never respected me. His mother, Shagufta Begum, made comments whenever she visited, loud enough for me to hear, though not loud enough for confrontation. But one Thursday changed everything. I had just finished watering the jasmine plants on the porch, humming softly like I always did to feel close to my husband, when Arman barged into the hallway, frustration pouring off him like steam from a kettle. He didn't greet me, he didn't look at the flowers, he looked at my existence like it suddenly violated the geometry of his house. "You take up too much room in this house," he blurted. Before I could process the words, he stormed into my room and flung the wardrobe open like it was an interrogation. Clothes flew, drawers were emptied, my belongings that were once organized with dignity were now handled like evidence for eviction. I whispered weakly, "What are you doing, Arman Beta?" "This room isn't for you anymore," he replied sharply. "We need it for someone who actually belongs here." And just like that, the ownership of my sanctuary was ripped from me without consent or compassion. I tried stepping inside, but his glare stopped me like a physical force. He packed my clothes in black plastic bags and dragged them to the staircase, as though fabric weighed less than nostalgia. Zoya stood frozen, gripping Mira's shoulder, helpless. Mira stared wide-eyed as my slippers, shawl, and medicine were piled carelessly into bags of discard. Then Rachel arrived. Rachel was Zoya's childhood best friend and neighbor, someone who treated me with more kindness than a son-in-law ever should. She rushed in the moment she heard the commotion, still wearing her office badge, hair neatly pinned in place, breath quick from concern, not gossip. Unlike the rest of the house, she didn't look at the bags. She looked at me. "Arman Bhai, stop," she demanded, stepping between him and my belongings like a shield forged from humanity. "This is a family matter," he retorted. "No," Rachel corrected firmly. "This stopped being family the moment respect left the conversation." I felt a spark of courage enter the room like oxygen. Zoya flinched, but Rachel didn't bend. Rachel knelt beside me and held my hand. "Kala, you don't need to explain your right to exist. You never asked for luxury, just belonging." And that belonging had been violated. As Arman dragged the final bag to the front door, he paused only because Rachel opened it before him, softly, symbolically, reclaiming authority without aggression. The door didn't slam, but my heart did. Because that day, the one thing taken from me wasn't my room. It was the illusion that love alone can secure dignity from those who refuse to offer it. And outside the door, reality was quietly preparing the price Arman would someday pay for that exact moment. The morning after my belongings were thrown out was even colder than the insult itself. I was still trying to gather fragments of myself when Arman announced with excitement dripping in his voice, "Ami is coming today, make space." The irony twisted inside me like a bitter secret. The same man who called my carefully packed bags clutter a day ago was now smiling like someone was bringing sunlight into the house. But the sunlight wasn't for me anymore. Within hours, his mother, Shagufta Begum, arrived like she was stepping onto a stage designed for her entrance. Her sari shimmered in pastel pink, embroidered heavily with gold thread. She wore perfume so strong it walked ahead of her like a declaration. Her jewelry sparkled, not sentimental like mine, but expensive, deliberate, loud. Arman proudly carried her designer leather luggage himself, placing it gently inside my room. Not the storage room I was sleeping in now. No, my room. The one I had prayed in, lived in, cried in quietly every night missing my husband. I stood outside the door as Armand opened it with unnecessary grandeur. "This is your room now, Ami," he said happily. She stepped in, scanning every corner with satisfied ownership. She traced her hand across my dressing table and smiled. "Finally, a room worthy of family," she declared. Her words didn't stab, they buried. Zoya was pale, not from illness, but field-tested fear. She wanted to speak. I could see it in the way her lips parted, then resealed themselves, like wounds learning to hide. Rachel had stood up for me a day ago, but today she wasn't here, and the house had already shifted its emotional gravity toward the woman who demanded respect without earning it. The house helper came out holding a trash bag. When she tugged it open slightly, I recognized the soft woolen shawl I knitted myself, the medicine pouch I carried everywhere because aging doesn't negotiate with health, my slippers again, and at the bottom, that velvet blue box holding my husband's letters. "What is this for, sir?" the helper asked cautiously. Armand shrugged without emotion. "Throw it out." I rushed forward, voice cracking like dried clay. "No, those are mine." He blinked coldly. "They're old, replaceable." Replaceable? 40 years of love and surviving mornings like this one can't be replaced with online shopping, Armand. His mother chuckled behind me. "Let it go, Samina dear. New rooms deserve new energy." Energy? No, ma'am. You confuse energy with entitlement. I know the difference now. That evening, I sat quietly on the porch. Mira came home from school and asked, "Nanny, why is Dottie sleeping where you used to pray?" I hugged her gently. Even love had become a whisper in this house. But a whisper was all the truth needed before it became a roar. Because sometimes Allah lets arrogance borrow comfort just long enough to collect regret. But what happened next shook the whole house in a way nobody expected. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share this story with others, subscribe to my channel for more inspiring and emotional real-life stories. Your support helps us bring more truth-filled stories like this. Respect is a fragile heirloom. Once shattered, the sound echoes longer than the moment itself. And for me, that echo had settled into my life like an unwanted tenant. After Armand's mother claimed the room that once held my prayers, the house changed its rhythm. Mornings no longer smelled of cardamom tea brewing gently in familiar silence. They now carried the artificial scent of rose vanilla air fresheners and loud opinions. Every day began with Armand carrying a tray of tea into her room, laughing like comfort itself depended on his performance. I could almost hear my dignity weeping behind the polished door I was uninvited from. I wasn't bold. I wasn't confrontational. I had spent my entire life choosing forgiveness over fire, silence over storms, and patience over protest. But the problem wasn't that I lacked a voice. The problem was that the house assumed I didn't deserve one. My daughter Zoya walked around like she was balancing vases filled with water she couldn't spill. She spoke less, swallowed more, and apologized constantly for crimes committed by others. Whenever Mira called for me, her excitement still shining like childhood honesty, Zoya would flinch, whispering, "Beta, quiet. Your Abu doesn't like interruptions." Interruptions? He called my existence an inconvenience. Now even affection had an eviction notice. I started withdrawing into the smaller storage room I now slept in. The room didn't bother me much. It was the symbolism carved into its walls. My clothes had been donated without permission. My shawl disappeared more than once. My slippers were constantly shifted away again and again, like the house was trying to condition me to vanish horizontally, not just emotionally. One evening, I sat folding Mira's socks when Armand passed by and muttered, "You don't need so many clothes anyway." "Many? No, sir. I had little. You just wanted even that to look heavy." To him, belongings were transactional, disposable, replaceable. But for a woman who carried grief like invisible stitches holding her together, possessions weren't material, they were memory containers. My gold locket was one. My blue velvet letterbox was another. My husband had written to me during the hardest years of our life, when poverty tested us, when seasons changed us, but never once when disrespect defined us. Those letters were my archive of survival, my proof that love existed in this world, even when people like Armand temporarily forgot its language. But the final blow came silently. The next morning, while organizing the cupboard where remnants of my belongings now lived, I noticed empty space. You know that sinking feeling when absence speaks louder than presence? My winter camise set, gone. The dupatta my husband gifted me the year Mira was born, gone. Mira's school drawings that I had pinned near my side of the bed months ago, gone. Even my painkillers pouch was missing again. I walked into the hall, breathless. "Zoya, my things." Armand answered from the sofa this time. "I donated them. Again." Again. Convenience repeated is cruelty rehearsed. Mira looked at him with unfiltered curiosity, the kind adults fear because children don't polish truth before delivering it. "You donate Nani's things more times than you donate charity, Dad," she said, innocently. The room froze, and for the first time, Armand didn't shout. Because a mother's hurt can be ignored, but when a child names the injustice aloud, even arrogance listens. A mother can swallow pain like medicine, quiet, measured, every day. But watching your child carry the consequences of someone else's cruelty is a bitterness no dua can soften quickly. Zoya, my only daughter, had always been the flame in every room she entered. She was a woman who commanded life, handled responsibilities with confidence, and laughed in full sentences rather than reluctant smiles. But after that day when Armin evicted my dignity, I noticed a gradual dimming. Not dramatic like storms or thunder, but slow, like a lantern losing oil. It wasn't just that Armin replaced me with his mother. It was that Zoya felt responsible for not stopping it, even though none of it had been hers to stop alone. A home that is controlled by raised tempers becomes a battlefield where everyone strategizes survival, even if nobody fights back openly. For days, Zoya moved around like she had memorized the algorithm of Armin's moods. If spoons clinked too loudly, silence. If Mira whispered for me in the hall, distraction. If I entered the kitchen while his tea brewed, awkward pivot. Zoya was constantly rewriting the script of the house just to avoid confrontation. Late one night, I lay awake on the thin mattress placed in the storage room, my temporary exile. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant barking of street dogs, and my own pulse louder than everything else. Then the softest knock of the door came, gentle, hesitant, and familiar. It was Zoya. She stepped in quietly, no arrogance, no standings, no announcements, just a daughter weighed down in guilt she never deserved to inherit. She knelt beside me. "Ami," she whispered. Her voice cracked like something was breaking inside her chest. "I can't sleep anymore," she said. "I keep replaying the moment he dragged your bags out. Not because you shouted, but because you didn't. Your silence is louder than his decisions, Ami. It shakes me every day." I slowly sat up and touched her face. She flinched, not away from me, but from the reality of what she was finally allowing herself to feel. "I failed you," she continued, tears finally escaping captivity. "Not because I agreed, but because I was too scared to disagree loudly. I was trying to save peace, but maybe I was feeding injustice instead." I shook my head gently. Peace that requires a mother's dignity is not peace. It's obedience wearing a mask. She closed her eyes tightly, trying to stitch strength into herself through the dark. Mira hadn't been there that day, but her words echoed now through Zoya. Nobody should justify their right to exist. Now Zoya was ready. Now the house was about to change. Not from my protest, but from my patience finally awakening inside my daughter's spine. But my silence was only the opening chapter. The next moment would force Armin to confront a truth he never expected. If this story stirred something inside your heart, please don't forget to like this video, share this story with your friends and family, subscribe to my channel for more real, emotional, and life-changing stories like this. They say arrogance stands tallest the moment before it falls. In Armin's case, the universe didn't push him. It simply stepped aside and let consequences walk in wearing the boots of reality. It all began after a restless dinner that tasted more like tension than spices. The table was quiet, too controlled, the kind of forced silence that bends just before it breaks. Armin was reading something on his phone, something work-related. His face wasn't angry, which had become his default expression around me. Instead, it was stiff, distracted. I didn't think much of it at first. Men who enjoy authority rarely show vulnerability unless something threatens their kingdom. But then came the call. The entire house heard his tone change. "What? Are you serious? You're joking, right?" He barked into the receiver. His forehead glistened with stress I had never seen on it before. His mother looked up, startled. Zoya froze, mid-wiping Mira's sauce-stained face. Even Mira stopped chewing her roti and stared, sensing something big had just entered our story. "No, don't do this to me. We had a deal." Armin's voice cracked like a window struck too hard by truth. He ended the call abruptly. Then came another. Then another. In the span of 1 hour, Armin, who once strutted around the hall like a man who owned stability itself, now looked like someone had pulled the floor from beneath his confidence without warning. His business partner, Imran, had betrayed him. A major deal, one that Armin had invested his savings and credibility into, was sabotaged. Documents forged, payments redirected, contracts suddenly void. And the worst part? It all happened behind his back, the same way he once decided behind mine. Zoya and I exchanged a silent look of unease. Not satisfaction, not celebration. This was too serious for petty vindication. But boy, the symbolism was loud. Armin walked into the hall, gripping the arm of the sofa for physical support. This time, he wasn't rearranging my room. Something bigger than home decor was rearranging him. The company shares, they're being questioned. Imran drained funds. The core account is frozen. We might be facing legal action if we can't prove our innocence, he said, voice hollow, ego leaking through its edges. His mother stepped forward. "But everything was so secure, Armin." "Not anymore, Ummi," he whispered. There was no roar. This was the whisper of a man who suddenly understood that control doesn't equal certainty. That night, no one commented about my blue box of letters lying in the corner of the storage room. Armin wasn't thinking about curtains or entitlement anymore. He was thinking about consequences. And for the first time, I realized loss had finally visited a man who once thought he could reassign belonging without paying the emotional bill. What came next wouldn't be whispered. It would be remembered. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not mine, his. Armin, a man whose voice once filled every room like an order, now moved like someone trying not to disturb the air. When arrogance begins to crumble, it does so quietly at first, like paint peeling in a home humidity eventually exposes. The financial crisis that shook Armin wasn't a passing wave. It was a storm setting up permanent residence. But unlike the storms he created in our home, this one was beyond his control. The business betrayal brought legal complications he couldn't bulldoze his way through. The bank accounts remained frozen. Lawyers demanded documents. Imran, the partner he trusted, had disappeared with money he couldn't trace. Every phone call now tasted metallic. Every notification felt like a warning. The empire of control he once ruled was handing him paperwork, not authority. And then came the moment that cracked the man himself. It was a Saturday afternoon when a legal courier knocked on the door. Arman, who once insisted that family matters should stay private, now signed the delivery slip publicly, hands trembling just slightly. Mira noticed. Children always do. Adults read contracts, children read hands. He opened the envelope and staggered back toward the sofa. His breathing wasn't loud, but uneven. His mother asked, worried, "What is it, Arman Beta?" He didn't answer her immediately. That alone was abnormal. Zoya stepped forward slowly. His wife, who used to avoid confrontation like she was protecting oxygen from fire, now stood steady. Maybe not fully brave yet, but present. Not crouched, not neutralized, not small. "The company property. They're putting a seal notice on it. They think we misdirected the funds." His first taste of misplaced blame. "Imagine being blamed for a mistake you didn't commit," I said quietly from the corner of the room. He looked up at me sharply. No anger, no dismissal, no lecture. The glare he once weaponized was now unarmed. Zoya spoke then, and her voice wasn't trembling this time. "Arman, this is exactly how you treated my mother. You made decisions about her belongings without thinking twice. You sealed her dignity out of a room, and now you're shocked that life is sealing your company room back at you?" That was it, the final nail cracking the coffin of assumption. He opened his mouth, struggling, not against us this time, but against himself. "I didn't think this was the same." "It wasn't the same," I said softly. "It was symbolic, and symbols teach faster than speeches. Because pain can be ignored, but patterns, when reversed, become revelations." He sat quietly, the envelope still open on the table like exposed evidence. Nobody needed raised voices anymore. Life had already cross-examined him, and the judgment was sinking in. But this moment of realization was only the beginning. What he does next will decide if this home heals or finally break for good. If this story moved you, don't forget to show your love and support. Like this video if you felt the emotion, share the story so others can learn too, subscribe to my channel for more real, powerful, and life-changing family stories.
Reality doesn't argue, it demonstrates. And once it began teaching Arman, there was no pause button left for him to press. The company sealing notice wasn't the climax of the chaos. It was the beginning of Arman realizing that life can remove what you love too, if you remove who loves you first. But unlike me, Arman didn't know how to endure consequences without demanding explanations. This storm wasn't built from emotion, it was built from evidence, and evidence is deaf to ego. Days passed, and the house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next fracture. Arman barely touched breakfast. His appetite had vanished faster than the respect he stripped away from me months ago. Zoya no longer tried to soften angles. She realized long ago that you can't cushion the edges of a man determined to break the furniture of belonging. I often saw Arman standing in the hallway outside my reclaimed room. Except this time, he wasn't carrying plastic bags filled with my donated things. He was carrying something invisible now. Unease. His mother, once wrapped in comfort like a medal, now paced around comparing bills instead of decor. "Arman, we must downsize," she muttered one morning. The word "we" sounded foreign in a house where decisions used to be singular, loud, authoritarian. One afternoon, Arman called for a family meeting. The phrase itself felt ironic. Months ago, I was told it was a family matter when they erased my bedroom. Now, family had become a forum again, because he needed witnesses, not obedience. Zoya and I sat. Mira climbed into Rachel's lap, who had arrived again just in time like moral punctuation, insisting the sentence be completed correctly. His mother sat too. Just this seating arrangement alone told me dominance had ended, logistics had begun. "We are selling the second property," he announced, "and canceling extra expenditures." Extra expenditures? Rachel raised a brow. "Including emotional ones too, Armand Bai?" He swallowed. No speech, no rebuttal, no explosion. His silence was becoming a habit now, the good kind this time. Mira spoke innocently, swinging her legs. "Does this mean Nani's room is hers again, not borrowed by shouting?" Armand closed his eyes briefly, painfully, like a man hearing his own history read aloud by someone too young to be intimidated. "Yes," he answered, voice low. "Her room is hers." First time he returned something without attaching conditions. Then I said the line that would break the house open into truth. "You can rearrange rooms for convenience, Armand, but when you rearrange people like belongings, the world eventually rearranges you." His mother looked startled. Zoya looked relieved for the first time in months. Rachel looked satisfied, not from victory, but from justice finally being pronounced in correct grammar. Armand exhaled. "I thought removing you would simplify my home. I didn't know it would eventually complicate my world." No one had to respond, because this time, the house wasn't listening to him. He was finally listening to the house. There are moments in life that don't just close a wound, they expose who caused it. For Armand, that moment arrived not with shouting, threats, or arguments, but with the unbearable quietness of self-realization, the kind that forces even the proudest heart to kneel. The room that once belonged to me had been freshly stripped of all the rose gold entitlement Shagufta Begum had flooded it with. The walls were back to the same soft pastel beige that once held my evening duas and quiet sobs. The curtains were simple again, fluttering gently like they were finally breathing in peace after months of suffocation. But the real restoration wasn't the room itself. It was the power returning to the woman who slept inside it. I was sitting on my mattress in the storage room when I heard footsteps again. Slow, heavy. No rushed pacing, no angry momentum. Just a man walking like someone carrying a mirror reflecting every mistake he made. Then Armand entered. In his hands was the blue velvet box, the one he once dismissed as replaceable clutter. Except now, the box looked different, not because its color changed, but because it changed hands, from being dragged out to being carried back in like something sacred. The dust on it reminded me of the heartbreak it endured, but the way he held it now reminded me of accountability learning humility mid-lesson. "I found this outside months ago," he said quietly. "I never opened it until today." He placed it gently beside my bed. His fingers brushed the ribbon with a tenderness that felt unfamiliar for a man who once handled emotions like disposable packaging material. "And when I did open it," he continued, pausing like someone swallowing pain for the first time instead of administering it, "I realized these weren't things. These were love archives. These were history. And for the first time in my life, I understood a terrifying truth." He looked straight into my eyes, unarmed, unshielded by dominance. "That a home is not secured by blood, it is fortified by the people you honor inside it. Honor. Not tolerate, not adjust around, not silence." The word finally sounded authentic when spoken aloud in this house. Zoya stood at the door, silent again, but not frozen this time. She was witnessing, not surviving. Mira rushed in behind her, jumped into my lap like a child reclaiming territory stolen from affection, and said with triumphant innocence, "See, Nani never needed big rooms. Big rooms needed her heart." And that was the moment I felt my dignity straighten fully. Not from hate, not from revenge, but from the truth that I never lost respect because I gave it away,
I lost it because someone took it without valuation, and now it was being returned at life's demand, not mine. I stood then, slowly but firmly. My back didn't ache with symbolic shrinkage anymore. My posture wasn't bent apologetically now. I walked past him and entered my room again, not because it was given back, but because he understood it was never his to take. But was his regret enough to rewrite the cost of cruelty? Or did Allah return this chapter to teach a greater lesson coming next? If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you rethink family, belonging, and respect, don't leave without supporting us. Like this video if you felt the emotion. Share this story to spread the lesson. Subscribe to my channel for more powerful real-life stories.